Welcome to another exciting moment of the Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Committee of the Metro Council. Come on, I'm trying to wake you guys up. There you go. It's 5:45. Thank you very much for staying this late. We have exciting legislation to review shortly. Nobody's looking at me. There you go. Thank you, Councilmember Mendez. We have what I want to do, I ask the council to send you guys an email with the legislation that we are going to review. What I'd like to do is a consent agenda. Should I pull any of them out of the agenda, or you guys are okay with the three? I can read the captions if it helps you. All right. So we have RS 2017-645, and that's a resolution authorizing the execution of a memorandum of understanding between the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County and MDHA. And this is about the veterans legislation. The other one is 2017-646, and this is a resolution declaring surplus and authorizing the grant of real property to certain nonprofit organizations, and authorizing grants not exceeding $1 million, blah, 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 from the Barnes Fund for Affordable Housing to certain nonprofit organizations selected for the express purpose of constructing and rehabilitating affordable or workforce housing. And the third one is 647, and that's a resolution declaring surplus and conveying a parcel of real property to New Level Community Development, and approving an amended and restated grant contract between NLCDC and the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County for construction of affordable housing units. Should I pull any of these of the agenda, of the consent agenda? Council Lady Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I always like to have, if someone is here to speak briefly about the bill. So for instance, for 645, since it's with MDHA, do we have someone from MDHA to speak about it?
Well, we have, let me just, go ahead.
MDHA is not here tonight, but I do, they had a letter that they submitted with the supplemental appropriation explaining what this is. This is the Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing legislation.
Okay.
So they're not here tonight, but I can answer.
Okay, and I'll look for that letter. I have plenty of papers on my desk, so it could be about anywhere right now. So I'll do that. And then, so moving on down, if someone could explain 646, whoever could speak to that, the nonprofits and how they were chosen and just how that money was allocated, like the choice in the terms of the denominations, because some is 995,000 and then some is 142,000. Just how do we arrive at that?
So they apply and they provide those dollar amounts that they're requesting. For this previous round, we did not have caps, but we do have caps for maximums in this innovation round, and for those rounds going forward, we'll also make that recommendation. In terms of who selected, they apply during November. They have 2 months to submit an application. Once we receive their application, we look to make sure that it meets threshold, just to see that they have all the documents submitted and different things like that, and then we hand those off to a separate review committee who's outside of the mayor's office to review those applications. So those folks are the people who actually score the applications. We average those scores, and that's what we provide for recommendation to the commission, and then they recommend it to you.
All right, sounds good. So how people, or how, I shouldn't call them people, they're organizations at this point. Mm-hmm. So how many organizations applied, do you know?
There were 26 applications.
There were 26 applications. And so what was the minimum threshold? If you could just kind of talk us through that for the listening audience.
Well, right. So we need to make sure that the application in and of itself was complete. So did you provide a pro forma? Do you have audits that you could submit to us? We also had to make sure that the ownership was largely in part from the nonprofit and not for the for-profit, because there were some instances that for-profits partnered with nonprofit organizations. But there are a couple of things that go into that, but mostly the completeness of the application was what we were looking for that threshold piece.
So how many would you say that were not complete?
There were 6.
Okay, so there were 6 not complete, 26 applied.
Right.
So that left 20. And then so walk me through how the other 20, just kind of maybe what was not there, just for the.
Yeah, well, so there are a lot of things that go into the scoring criteria. One of the things is to see what percentage is for the actual development and which part is the development fee, the developer fee. Something else we looked at was to see, is it within the promise zone? Where is it located throughout Nashville and Davidson County? We also looked to see, did you serve a special population? So you're awarded extra points for that if it's persons with disabilities or seniors. We also looked to see, do you have a positive cash flow and net worth? So you were also awarded points based on that criteria too. So we looked at finances, we looked at the actual project itself, making sure that it was sound in that way. And then based on that, we have a list of scores for the nonprofits, and whoever were at the top is who we awarded funds to and made that recommendation for.
Okay, so is it safe to say all the ones that are listed, the 3 that were chosen in the end, did they all cater to a specific population, and were they all in the promise zone?
I don't know if they were in the promise zone offhand, but I could definitely get you that information. But in terms of who they served, well, it's all a requirement for these that they're 80% of the area median income and below, so they all meet that threshold. But we can get you the details for, for more in depth. I know that for the Habitat for Humanity one, there's one unit that's below 30% area median income. We have 20 units that's for the 30 to 60%, and then 5 of the units for 60 to 80%.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you providing the insight on how the different grantees were chosen. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Council Lady. Councilmember Mendez.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. 2 things. For 647, I'll need to abstain because I'm on the board of New Level Community Development Corporation. And then for 646, I wanted to ask, and I probably should ask this during Budget and Finance, but I was talking about something else at the time, so sorry. For 646, I know with previous properties that have been transferred, there were problems with title for one or more properties. And I notice in the resolution, it says that these properties are owned in fee simple by the metropolitan government. Are we sure the title is clean and organizations who receive these properties won't have to do work to clean up title?
We're not sure that they're clean, but we do ask that they put within their pro forma. We have that there's that cushion in place so that there's funding that we allocate to the nonprofits to pay whatever is needed so that they can clear those titles.
I guess a legal question would be, is the resolution accurate when it says we're conveying fee simple title? That doesn't sound right.
Council, can you please speak on the microphone?
If there's doubt as to there being a cloud on the title, we can't convey that title. I think within the next 18 hours, we'll have that answer and assurance as to the title status.
So Metro Legal helped us a lot with this, and they were the ones actually that reviewed a lot of this, and they felt comfortable with that language, but we can check with them between now and tomorrow.
All right, I guess I'm wearing my lawyer hat a little bit here. Fee simple title usually means to me good and valid title, and I'm hearing that there may or may not be a good title.
Well, and what we've been told before is that a lot of times with these Metro-owned properties that they've gone through the proper assurances, but we found out in the last round that that was not the case. In this case, we basically allow for funding to go towards that to clear it, but we'll check with Metro Legal just to make sure we have that answer for you.
All right, thank you.
Council Lady Hart.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to reiterate what was said in the planning meeting in terms of the capacity of the smaller nonprofits not being able to compete with the well-established nonprofits. And I'd like to see those well-established nonprofits work alongside of the smaller nonprofits, share the wealth, especially when you speak of those projects that may be in the particular communities that the smaller nonprofits are located. Because it's almost as if they're coming in and taking over just because they have the ability and the knowledge and the know-how, as well as the staff to do those things. And I'd really like to see capacity build in some of the smaller nonprofits.
Is that what you want to ask from the mayor's office?
I just want to make it known, and yes, I would like the mayor to do something to make sure that the wealth is shared throughout the entire city of Nashville, and not just in those specific areas where you have nonprofit organizations that are well established to be able to carry this out.
Adrian?
So we address that in 3 ways. The first way is through the nonprofit capacity building piece, and so the application was launched last week for that. So I think Adrian mentioned that we've partnered with the Center for Nonprofit Management, and so we'll be selecting 10 nonprofits through that application period to go through them to look at their governance and look at their finances and marketing and fundraising and all kinds of other things that strengthen a nonprofit. They'll be going through that with CNM, and we will be paying that fee in partnership with a couple of other sponsors who are interested in supporting this effort as well. So then the second phase of that is where we're partnering with the National Development Council. They're a national group that's recognized for providing technical assistance and training to help grow smaller nonprofits and strengthen larger nonprofits as well with their affordable housing developments. And so they'll be coming into Nashville. We're opening up those training sessions to more than 10 folks because we feel like that's something that a lot more groups can take advantage of, and so we'll be doing that in the fall. So then the second phase for us addressing the smaller nonprofit and making sure that we support them is that for the previous round, we did not provide caps for the fall round, and so what we've done is set aside $1.5 million for the innovation round that's the application is out for right now. And so the other folks who have strong applications from the fall round we're able to take a look at those existing applications and award them funds instead of having them go through the efforts of submitting an entire application all over again when we already know that those applications are strong. So we have that second piece to help support those smaller groups from the fall round in this current round. And then the third phase is that we recommended to the commission that we have a set aside for the fall 2017 round where there are smaller grants, so smaller nonprofits are able to apply for smaller dollars, and it'd be a set aside from the overall $10 million round, so that maybe you want to build 1 or 3 or 5 homes or units instead of the larger developments that a lot of the larger nonprofits typically do. And so you're not competing with those larger groups. That's a special set aside for you that you could take advantage of there.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Can we get some numbers on the success of this plan, maybe later after the fall? I mean, this is a good plan. We'd like to know, if it's working out or if there's other things that.
Right. So we're partnering with all those groups to see how we can measure the success of that program, whether that means seeing what their applications looked like and their scores were in previous rounds and comparing it to future rounds. We're also going to do a self-assessment with those nonprofits so that they can let us know, how do you feel you've grown and you've benefited from this program too? And we're more than willing to share that information with folks.
Sure. So at the end of the fall, after you go through that process, we'd like to get some information. Is that okay?
Definitely. Yeah,
Council Lady Hurd? Yeah?
And I want to note, too, that for the National Development Council piece, there is a certification that's attached to that, and that'll be a great way to see if folks were able to learn from the curriculum and things, if they were able to pass that exam and be certified.
All right. Thank you very much. So should I pull any of these out of the consent agenda? No? I have you as abstaining. All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. So the 3 of them pass. Thank you very much for, that was very passionate, appreciate it. We are going to start now with a presentation from the people from The Voice. It's not a singing group, it's really an advocacy group. And we have some people from NOAA in the audience. Thank you for coming here. Who's going to be the speaker? Mr. Floyd Schechter, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you all for giving us the opportunity to present tonight. Avi Poster, our chair, is in Israel visiting family, and on his behalf, I also extend our thanks. To Adrian and Morgan, we really appreciate your hard work, your efforts, and your accomplishments in just 1 year, and look forward to many good years to come. We have 23 slides for you to look at tonight, different presenters for them, and I'd like to introduce my presenters, panelists, Professor James Fraser from Vanderbilt University, Kay Bowers, who is the Executive Director of New Level Community Development Corporation, and again, I'm Floyd Schechter from A Voice for the Reduction of Poverty. Without further ado, Dr. Fraser.
All right, you can do this one. Yep. Good evening. It's good to be here again, and I know that many of you have heard probably some version of the report that my team wrote on equitable development a couple years ago, so I want to go pretty quickly through these slides and make a couple points that I don't think have been made perhaps poignantly enough. So we know, there's a difference between gentrification and equitable development, and to me, gentrification equals displacement of lower income to moderate income families from their neighborhoods. Oftentimes, these are neighborhoods that our African-American population or new immigrant populations live in. If we talk about Nashville in particular, but nationally, this is the case as well. Of course, as you go around the country, there are different minority group member neighborhoods, but this is something that doesn't affect everyone the same way. And so equitable development is where we're not just thinking about building housing, but we're thinking about the history of spatial segregation in our society, because I think often it is relegated to the past, like these were past sins, and now we don't have de jure segregation anymore, but we still do have de facto segregation. We can see it. And if you look at the next slide here, I have some maps of Nashville over time, and you can see the red dots are the African-American population and the green dots are white population. And as you go through the 20th century up to 1970, those neighborhoods where African Americans could live were very constrained because we had racial zoning. And so there were actually boundaries where whites could live and where African Americans could live. And that really had a large impact on the quality of life and the opportunities to build wealth when certain groups were sequestered to neighborhoods that weren't the most promising areas to be, like Black Bottom, which is now Sobro, which flooded all the time. But as you see now, the last panel on the bottom, 2010, so this doesn't even show exactly what's happening now. You see the red dots, which represent African Americans, seemingly we look like we're more integrated. But what's happening is a definite movement toward the south, toward Antioch, and toward the north, toward Madison. And so there are definitely new pockets of potential segregation by income and race that could be formed. And the 1968 Fair Housing Act, which has been reaffirmed just not only 2 years ago by the Supreme Court, says we have to be intentional about not letting that happen because it's detrimental and it reproduces inequality. Next. So the components of an equitable development approach really have to be rooted, I believe, in the values of equity and diversity, thinking about the history of how we got to now. The neighborhoods that are gentrifying are the same neighborhoods that people were told, this is where you're allowed to live. And that's pretty deep. I mean, I have friends like Sam McCullough, whose family's lived in one of these neighborhoods in Northeast for almost 100 years. And he's watching his community transform in a major way that some people consider devastating. But also, we need to balance the positive and negative effects of revitalization by thinking about if there are going to be downsides, if there's going to be like neighborhoods that become so land value intense so that we cannot afford to put a lot of 0 to 30 housing or even 40 to 60. We at least have to be thinking through this through a racial lens. This isn't just about anyone. I mean, our rates of home ownership in Nashville, like countrywide, are very different for Latinos, for African Americans, or for whites. The rates of rental and rental cost burden are also different based on those categories. So we have to be thinking about putting together a package of tools that I know Kay will talk about and that I've spoken a little bit about before through a real intentional lens of if we want a diverse community, we're going to have to make that happen. And I really believe that equity means not looking at the past as it's really the past, right? Because it's not dead yet. It's still having effects on what's happening today. On a data point, more as a professor, I guess, as opposed to someone who is enamored with the topic and very committed. I know, and I applaud the mayor's office and Adrian and folks for working on developing a monitoring system, especially in those promise zones. But we definitely need to make sure that as soon as possible, we can have metrics and we can have strategies to measure those things so we can identify areas that may be concentrating in poverty, areas that are opportunity rich where we could perhaps get some low to moderate income families located and have that mix. So people have the choice of where they want to live in the city as opposed to being told because you are poor or because you are moderate income, you will only be able to be in certain parts. And last, building the Equitable Development Toolkit. I've talked about some of these tools before, but on this next slide, as you've probably heard some of your colleagues and Mayor Berry speak about funding, building, preserving, and retaining affordable housing, we have about 14 tools that we presented. Next one. And I wanted just to highlight a couple without getting into detail because I know Kate is going to. But one of the things that I really am happy about is the Barnes Housing Trust Fund. That's an awesome thing to have. Other cities have housing trust funds that are funded at levels of hundreds of millions of dollars. And these are cities our size. This is not just like San Francisco or LA. We also are really happy about the fact that the city government, Metro, is offering properties that are in their, in their ownership to nonprofits to develop this housing. But if we can do active land banking and buy properties and accumulate a portfolio of properties around the city and then develop a community land trust to help work through the details of how for rent and for home ownership properties would be developed for years 0 to 120, I think that would be a really great strategy because I don't think, at least at this point, that a community land trust involves the state government letting you do it. And then lastly, I wanted to say recently in the media, now I push this because this comes out of research of really 20 years of working in neighborhoods around the country. And a colleague of mine and I wrote an op-ed not too long ago, a few months, talking about, it's not anti-capitalist, but it's saying that we also need a community-owned housing market. We need a market of housing just like we need a market for healthcare or a market for any type of social good that we have all got to have. Or it causes additional problems for our city, not just the individuals that end up homeless, but we have a great expense to bear economically for going down that path. And then lastly, some of my colleagues that are in the room here put together an op-ed, wanting to drive home the point that when we talk about concentrated poverty, when we talk about opportunities for people to live in neighborhoods that have amenities and have the types of things everyone would like to see, we have to somehow think through how can we deal with the continued significance of race. How can we honestly do that? And I don't have the answers for that, but I put that out to you because tonight I just wanted to give you the message that I'm really blessed that over the last few years you've listened to A Voice and to a lot of other groups. Berkeley Allen, thank you so much. Colby Sledge, Anthony Davis, Bob Mendez, many more people. I mean, it's really heartwarming to know that you care, but now is the push, because inclusionary zoning is something we wanted, mandatory, but that's not the end of the road. We got a lot of other strategies we can roll out. Thank you.
So recently, Vanderbilt University conducted a poll of over 1,000 registered voters in Davidson County. And the top 5 priorities for those 1,000 registered voters are on the screen in front of you. If you look at priorities 1, priority 2, reducing crime, improving public education, you know, our top 2 funded areas are improving public education and reducing crime. That's funding consistent with your priorities. And it's a good thing to do from a budgeting perspective. As you move down the list of the top 5 issues, issues 4 and 5 are not nearly as well funded in proportion to issues 1 and 2. And it's important that we understand if we don't fund our priorities, the people who vote, if we don't fund what they want us to vote, to fund, they're going to vote to elect somebody who will. And there was a national election recently when people ignored a message. And you all know what happened when you ignored that message, when we ignored that message. It's not a pretty thing. It's going to happen here in Metro if we continue to ignore the message of the voters of this city. A Voice did not spend $30 million the last 3 years to establish a priority to fund affordable housing. It's there. Ask John Gear from Vanderbilt University. So how do we track the data about, Jim, will you toggle, please? How do we track the data about affordable housing? If you're running a business like I do, and you try and do it without data, if you'll toggle back and forth between the 2 slides, that one and the next one. So this data is from the 5-year period, 2011 to 2015. It's called a heat map. Metropolitan Social Services does these maps. Dinah Gregory just released it. The data that we have to work with is 2 years old. It ends in 2015. If you tried running a business on 2-year-old data, I promise you, you'd be at 11th and Broadway in a hurry. Toggle back, Jim, one time. So if you look at the concentration, it's kind of spread widely 10 through 14. Go forward 1 year, Jim, and look at what's happening. Jim talked about this. If you go up Clarksville Pike, up Gallatin and Dickerson Pike, and down Murfreesboro and Nolensville Road, poverty's being dispersed from the urban core out those arterial pikes. It's dramatic. And when you get the 16 data from HUD, one of these days, there'll be a new map. It will be more pronounced than these 2 maps are pronounced. So what can we do to track that data as a city and not wait for HUD? We talk well about the 400 units of affordable housing we're going to build with the money from the Barnes Fund. It's a really good thing to talk about it. We don't talk about the thousands of units of affordable and workforce housing that were demolished during the same period of time. So when you hear about 3 250-unit apartment complexes within a 5-month period whose Section 8 contract expires and the tenants are evicted, it's 750 you lose versus 400 you've built, and that's 3 demolition and construction permits. You can track these permits. When we talk about the median price of housing in Nashville, what's affordable and what's not, we don't differentiate between the developer who pays $150,000 for a tear down and the homeowner who buys a $150,000 house. We have the demolition permit the developer pulls 12 months later on that same address, but we don't apply it. We count that as an affordable home that somebody bought. That's not what's happening. Track real data. We have the means to track data, and that's how you run a business, any business, including the business of developing, building, preserving, and maintaining affordable housing. You need tools, and you need funds, and you need places to build this with, but we're not doing a good enough job with the statistics that we have in metro departments of tracking our affordable and workforce housing stock and what's happening to it. That's what you see in heat maps in hindsight. But we have real-time data in our system that we're not analyzing. And as a business, we could be doing much better running our efforts. Adrian and Morgan could do even better work if they had real-time data to look at. Thank you. And Kay, Jim, go forward.
I think the microphone works. Would you mind testing? Does it work? I think it's,
Hello, testing.
okay, I lied to you. Sorry, Ms. Bowers. In the meantime, when we are done, I'll open the floor for questions. Save them till the end, please.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be with you yet again and remind you of some of the tools in our toolbox that we bring before you and for your consideration. So I'm going to review probably about 6 tonight very quickly, but I left a copy of the slides. I tried to leave a copy of the slides for my section with people. So if you don't have a copy, let me know and I'll get you one. But I do a lot of quite a bit of study looking at other cities to benchmark on, to see what they're doing in this arena that maybe we could replicate here in Nashville and see how far they've come from when they started. And I know the Chamber has benchmark cities that they benchmark Nashville off of. So I'm going to tell you about what's going on in some of those cities tonight because it's doable. It really is. What I want to see from people like you in the mayor's office and folks, our key decision makers, is an urgency. That's reflected in your actions after presentations and discussions. And instead of saying, well, for this reason that won't work, and for this reason that won't work, I believe we need to adopt the attitude of, how can we make this work in Nashville to improve conditions for our folks in Nashville so that the tenants that live at the 2 apartment units that Covenant Capital has said they're not going to renew the leases just last week, don't have to worry where they're going to go. And that's just the last 2, right, Berkeley? How many of those have we seen in the last year? How many hundreds of people? Lloyd knows I get a little heated about this because our office is one of those agencies that gets the phone calls every day. So we're talking to the mom, or we're talking to the dad, or we're talking to the aunt, or we're talking to the grandmother. So we're not as detached from this as other folks are. So let me go over some of those toolkits. And I think one of the best ones, one of the best steps that Nashville could do is to establish a Department of Housing in metro government that is staffed by civil service employees. And it would be charged with leading Metro's strategic housing blueprint for action. It would have the budget it needs. It would have additional staff for great folks like Adrian and Morgan so that they could really help lead this city and help us move down this path. Guess what? We're years behind other benchmark cities. Go to Charlotte's website. Go to Austin, Texas, and learn about theirs. Even Louisville, which is not too far up the road, they have robust housing and community development departments, and they have robust research and policy arms. So that's one of the actions that I think would really get us a ways down the road. The second one, which has been talked about a fair amount, which is general obligation bonds to adequately capitalize the Barnes Fund. Again, models of success. If you look at Austin, their first bond fund was passed in 2006 with $55 million in it, and then another one passed again in 2013 with $65 million in it. And their blueprint for action just came out, and their goal and their metrics are set up to build 60,000 affordable housing units in 10 years. General obligation bonds are used around the country to help create more affordable housing units. The next one is to establish a dedicated funding stream to fund the ongoing allocation of the Barnes Fund. And why do I say this? Because we all know in our democracy that mayors turn over on a regular basis, right? Administrations turn over. And so you're subject to the winds of new administrations, whether they will continue to support something like this that we know is not really a temporary problem. Do you think it's a temporary problem? It's not going to go away very soon. So we need to think long-term, and like you're building a house, what do you need to put in place in terms of strong foundations and structures so that they will serve us now and in the future? And this is another one of the tools that could be utilized in the toolbox. Another one that Jim mentioned is a community land trust. And a community land trust is not the same as a land bank. They're very different entities. So the purpose of a community land trust is to preserve affordability over the long term. 30 to 99 years is usually what you see, and most often 99 years. So when buyers purchase, for example, homes from a land trust, they purchase the home, they don't purchase the land. The land stays in the trust, and that's the piece that preserves affordability over time, and that's why it's such a great tool. One of the ways we have in the U.S. currently, and have had since the 60s, for creating affordable housing has come from federal dollars. But those retention mechanisms have ranged anywhere from 5 years to 20 years. So here we go, we've invested millions and millions of our money, right, into building affordable housing, and then the retention period, the affordability period is only 5 years, maybe 7 years. What have we done? In our family's household, we call that wasting money, right? So community land trust take that factor out of it. And it's usually run, in most cases, by a nonprofit. Some communities, they're government entities, but in most cases in the United States, they're operated by nonprofits. We've had a significant loss in middle-income housing since the recession, and this is a nationwide phenomenon. It's not just Nashville, but the majority of the housing that has been produced has been higher-end housing, not middle-income housing. I think the numbers that someone gave me recently, someone looked up this data, there were 87 single-family homes that they looked up and found that were affordable under $200,000. That's 87 homes. That's not enough, is it, for someone buying? And then condos, it was even less. So we have such a shortage of housing for folks making $36,000 to $40,000, $42,000. That housing has drastically reduced, especially since the recession. And we have a real need for housing for folks in that income range. And then a land bank is typically a government entity, and it's created by a local ordinance pursuant to state enabling legislation. This is number 6. And its purpose, its focus is on the conversion of vacant, abandoned, and tax delinquent properties into productive use, and it also can be used to, guess what? Clear title issues and other barriers, and then transfer that land. In many cases, it could be transferred by a community land trust, and so it serves as an entity that kind of clean things up. Public entities, municipal governments may have tracts of land that's not being used, that's was formerly used and it's not being used anymore. It could be transferred to the community land trust to look at any issues that may be associated with it, and then get it ready to move back onto the market to be used for affordable housing. So land banks and community land trust really need to be established at the same time. And they operate in a cooperative way. And then the last tool is something called a community benefits agreement. And some of you may have heard about these. And these are not always done between local governments and developers. Many times they're between neighborhood groups and other entities in the community. And so between groups in the community, nonprofits, neighborhood organizations, and developers. And it's a legal binding agreement that's enforceable that says to the developer, if we see that you want to do this in our community or our neighborhood, well, in exchange for that, here's what we'd like to see. It's a legal binding, mutually agreeable mechanism that is enforceable over time. And those community benefit agreements are used across the nation pretty widely. But it requires a significant amount of education. It requires coalition building, communities coming together or neighborhoods to establish their priorities, and then there's negotiations that go on, and then there's monitoring because these agreements are binding legally over time. And so someone has to kind of do that. And the Center for Community Progress, there's a website for that, is a good site to go to where you can look up information on community benefit agreements and other tools that I've explained tonight. So to end, I just want to say it's time to use the tools. Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you. I have Councilmember Davis on the queue. Scott Davis.
All right. Thank you for coming, panel. Thank you for bringing us the information. It's more of a statement than a question, probably. But one of the ways that's very difficult as a council member to create affordable housing, and this is just coming from my experience, and I've had the departments help and try to get through certain obstacles, but I'm really starting to feel that we need to change our zoning code. Last week at planning, I have a school teacher, African-American, single mother, whose relative passed away and left her over half-acre land that was right next to a 29-unit condo development in which I voted for and I brought forward in 2013, built by developer Justin Hicks. And I have an old saying, what I do for the developer, I do for my neighbors. What happened, she had letters for support from 25 people in the neighborhood, had people speaking support that lived next door to it come down to planning. But even though it was off of Collector Street, it was not a step-down policy enough. According to the planning staff, I don't want to put words in their mouth because they're not here, but you can rewatch the video. She needed to build 9 units, which she had plenty of room. She hired a contractor who was going to going to help her develop it. She went to the bank. She did everything correctly. And who knows more about affordable housing than a single mother that is a school teacher, a single mother that's a Metro employee. She needed to build 9 units to sell each of those at $250,000, which may be still a lot, but the condos next door sold for $325,000 apiece. Now, at $225,000 to $250,000 for those units, 2 working adults, 2 Metro school teachers could afford that unit, that 3-bedroom, 2-bath. But because they would only allow her to do 5 and not 9, it would drive the price back up. Her zoning was denied, even though 9 is a big step down from 29. And it was doing properly, it was within the quote-unquote zoning area. It was denied 4-3. And I've had other developments that they've gone out, they've done contracts to people needing affordable housing that we've done for other developments, and my colleagues have supported me on that. But one of the problems we're having is our policies don't allow us, because once we violate the planning policy, we need 21 votes. And we have people who, on this council, not throwing names, but we know who they are, who always vote against, even though it's for affordable housing. It's the policy. It's the policy. Planning says no, but we're the legislative body. If we really want affordable housing, which I know there's at least 30 of you who really want it, maybe 35, but right now we're being tripped up with policies. Right now we need to really revamp the zoning code. When a person who's lived in a neighborhood, who's part of that community who needs it, who's willing to create it. And what I was showing you over here is, and thank you, Council Lady Van Reese, for your support. There was the Pitway project that we had on Oakwood that the people wanted certain things and they wanted to make sure it was affordable. Well, we did. Thanks to Bob Mendez, Erica Gilmore, and a few others that helped us with that. But once again, the policy, it was against the planning's policy, so I had people voting against it. But as the emails and the documentation will show you, the developer has purchased that property, and they went and got incentive grants from THDA, and they're building 300 units, from 650 to 900. The $900 a month units are 3-bedroom, 2 baths, and they'll be pre-leasing this July. And Nancy, when did we do that bill for Oakwood?
Councilmember,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well,
I have a
the
lot
bills
of
come from, but the thing is, though, we get tripped up all the time with policy, and we have an affordable housing bill that this council passed. You know what I mean? So I think the majority of us want to do it, but we're getting tripped up with some of the policies and regulations, you know, with this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The only thing I would respond, we can't affect the policies, but we have gone to the Neighborhood Resource Center. We're putting on a 3-part training program for neighborhood leaders on the subject, and it's been well received. We're being invited into communities like yours by neighborhood leaders to do the same thing for residents so that you can have the support that you need to pass the legislation to change policy.
Okay, all right.
The support is there in my neighborhood, I think, and more support is always welcome. You know, but I think, and this is just my opinion, that a voice in some of the organizations can be more effective by helping with the muscle to change the zoning codes and going through and just showing you, like, this is a good example where we had a chance to create affordable housing, but we are tripped up here because of X, Y, and Z. So if it's just affecting my neighborhood and I'm wanting to, we can say, listen, this works. We have a proven template now. That's the support that some of us need. And that's just my suggestion. It could, you know, take it with a grain of salt, and I'll talk to you afterwards. But I think the will is here, but I just think some of us just need the muscle.
Thank you,
to help get through the
Councilman.
chamber.
Thanks. Councilman Mendez.
Thanks. Thanks for being here, guys. And let me ask, just to follow up on Councilman Davis's point, you know, the way I think I would put the same point is he's run into where Nashville Next, with his district developing so rapidly, Nashville Next doesn't accurately capture really what's going on in at least pretty big chunks of his district. And I think, and so we've planning updated Nashville Next, and I know there's a mechanism for that. That would help Councilman Davis running into no votes from the Planning Commission. And I think my guess is if there's particular districts that are experiencing gentrification where Nashville Next needs to be updated, my guess is y'all would be happy to help talk to the councilman about trying to get that done.
We would. We'd also be happy to introduce community benefit agreements for the councilman's neighborhood groups so that they could condition their support of the requested zoning at the Planning Commission upon the developer providing the kind of things the community wants to see. And a large part of getting the Planning Commission to vote against policy is having enough people present from the community that are affected. Bob, you know that you can't change policy overnight. It just doesn't happen, but things are happening quickly in neighborhoods. And so one of the reasons Kay recommended community benefit agreements, they're not subject to state interference, and that you can write a contract between two parties, and the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution says nothing you can do to get rid of it. So we're really behind it. We think it's a tool that the planning department could push a little more and take some of the heat off of them to constantly change policy. It's one of the things we're talking about.
Good, I appreciate that. And so let me ask you the things I was actually going to ask about. Adrian, I know that y'all are working on metrics that you know, a couple of the speakers talked about. What's the timeline for that?
We hope to release the Housing Nashville report mid-May. And at that time, we hope to have some community engagement and we have some focus groups with The Voice and NOAA and also this committee throughout the summer so that we can go through the data together and have some policy recommendations from that.
All right, thank you. And what's your thinking at this point about the idea that was mentioned about you know, whether it's looking at demolition permits or just at the macro level, the idea of you lose a couple of 200-unit buildings and all of a sudden, you know, it feels like we're not making a lot of progress. Is that going to be reflected in the metrics?
I'm not sure. I mean, most of the data that we have to use is ACS, which is the American Community Survey from Census. So it's primarily 2000 to 2015. 2 of those apartment complexes happened this week. And so I don't think that will be reflected, knowing that we're trying to get the report wrapped up by mid-May. But we do, I mean, that's something that we currently keep on our radar and have been we've been working with a lot of the apartment complexes. We've also been calling the apartment owners directly and asking, are you planning to provide affordable housing with these? And one has said yes, and I think you'll be seeing possibly a pilot agreement on that one. But we're trying our best to make sure that we can keep up with those so that we can be more strategic going forward.
Thanks. I think that's important from I mean, not I was going to say public relations, but also from the substance of, you know, there's such a, I think, just gut level feeling out in the community from people that I talk to that, hey, it's great, but, you know, there's evaporation of units going on just from skimming the news. And if our metrics don't take into account, you know, address that sort of visceral feeling of hundreds of units going poof, then we're probably not doing as good a job as we can with the metrics. And then my last question is, I don't know who, I mean, Floyd, you might know the answer to this, Adrian. Where are we at on the legality of Metro issuing general obligation bonds to be used for affordable housing? I've heard different things over time about that.
We've certainly had some discussions about, because we've heard this tool for quite some time. I think right now, we're hoping to work with Metro Legal just to get a better sense of what that means for Metro to do that. And so hopefully we'll know something soon, but I wish I had a Metro Legal person here to talk about it in greater depth.
You don't have to give me a time today, but if you could think about when would be a good deadline to give us a report about whether it's legal or not legal for us to do it, because this has been floating for a while, and it's 9 months ago that I heard competing things from different Metro employed lawyers.
Right.
Councilman. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Adrian.
I was just going to mention that with the action plan, we've discussed having, just like we did last year, we had a 2016-2017 action plan. We expect to do the same for this year. And so hopefully between now and whenever we release this report, we can have a better sense of what GO bonds.
Thank you.
So the state enabling legislation has a specific list of purposes that municipalities can use or utilize general obligations for, and one of those specific items is not affordable housing, but there are ways in enabling legislation to make that happen, so you can call it something that is on the list without doing that. That's why the confusion exists.
Anything to replace me? My daughter.
I'm the vice chair of this committee. This is the first time I've ever sat up here, so I don't have any idea how to work this board. Maybe we can have an offline conversation about how to do that. And then I'll try to figure out how to work this.
Teach that in law school.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hi, I just wanted to add one thing, and it's been an oversight on my part completely when I was writing that report. I think it was, at least. Yeah, maybe it was, if I don't remember. But we really, like any major campaign that the city would take a lead on, we need an education campaign, a media campaign, because I know, and I work with Open Table Nashville and other groups, and I know that, we need to do a good job at relations between neighbors and in neighborhoods and between neighborhood associations and HOAs and the rest of it, around this issue. I think it's definitely achievable, but I would really like to see a budget that included something so it would take some of the heat off of you all, and you could work with a toolkit yourselves that would specifically be designed for that kind of education campaign, so people didn't always have this vision that is unfortunately a negative stereotype of what low-income housing could be, because it's so much more.
All right, thank you. And now we've got two at-large council people figuring out how to change a light bulb. We're trying to get Councilman Leonardo.
If I could just add to that, one of the best examples of a really good education campaign was in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And the gentleman that was involved in that was here about a year ago for a ULI meeting. He talked about this, and he talked about how much good was done as a result of this education campaign. It was very targeted, very strategic, and so Minneapolis, St. Paul really, people made quite a significant turnaround in the minds and the attitudes and the responses and in the comments when they embarked upon this type of initiative. And they can really, I think we can get a lot of bang for our buck if we think about doing something here in our community.
All right, I think I got to figure out. Councilman Leonardo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, and thanks to you guys for being here. I just have a couple of questions. And it's kind of on the heels of what Councilman Mendez was talking about, but, between we have Open Data Nashville, we've got the Nashville Ledger, we have all the data that's out there. We just had a meeting at the Bordeaux Library a couple weeks ago with MDHA about the Fair Housing Assessment, and it was a great conversation that we had, but again, we didn't have these up-to-date maps, and I didn't know if there's anything the council could do, because I think it would help this committee if we had, kind of some real-time data to know how much we're losing versus how much we're adding, and in the locations, because the information is there, and it's just like, Kayak looks at Orbitz, Priceline, Expedia, so if we had some kind of a search engine that would assimilate that data, I didn't know if you guys were aware of something like that, and that was my first question. Okay.
Yeah, I am actually aware that have actual units in an Office of Housing that do this type of work, and Adrian's completely right. The best census data is now the ACS, but the ACS is rather limited in a large portion of census tracts that don't have larger populations. The estimates are so far off that you can't really make meaningful conclusions. But what we can do is use a host of local data if we could just, have different departments help facilitate that process, where we're not just looking at permitting data, we're looking at demolitions, we're looking at a range of products, and the Annie Casey Foundation has supported some work that has some toolkits that I've used around that, so we'll dig some of that stuff up, but it's very doable.
Just to give you an idea, there are different federal and state agencies involved in tax credit housing. Isn't one source you go to and say, how many tax credit units are going to expire in the next 24 months? You have to go to THDA, you have to go to HUD, the national office, and then you got to go to MDHA, the local office, to find out which ones they're aware of, and they're not all aware of the same transactions. There is not today one unified source to collect all of the data that impacts what we're trying to accomplish. And you all, I know, are supportive. I think Councilman Mendez is correct. If we put a little bit of effort into maybe a department that would be charged and be budgeted with the responsibility of collecting the data in real time and presenting it to you all so you can make informed decisions.
And my next question is on the community land trust. I think it's a wonderful idea, but I guess I would just want some more information. So, for example, you don't own the land. So, are these people getting life estates? Are they just getting leases? Can these properties be encumbered? Are they subject to liens? Is there a foreclosure process, or is there a detainer process? So, is it just a play on words, or are they actually? They own the improvements, but in what fashion do they own them, and can they be encumbered, subject to liens, and the like?
So you have both rental and ownership units in community land trusts. The trust owns the real property, so any legal action that would impact the real property itself has to have the trust as a party, and if it's rental, it has to include the tenant under state law as a party. So it's no different than any other individual. It's a corporate person, a nonprofit corporate person, just like a corporate entity and just like you or I when we own real estate. No different, just dedicated to a period of affordability of ownership.
And it may be on the internet, and I don't know, but is there any way we can get a copy of the Austin, Texas blueprint, that if you guys have that?
Yes, we can get you a copy and we'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
We'd like to add to that the Barnes Housing Trust Fund did release an RFI last week requesting letters of interest for the formation of a community land trust in Nashville. And so we are partnering with Grounded Solutions, who thankfully is based in Nashville, and they're a national expert on developing community land trusts. And so not only will we help to support that entity financially, but we are hoping to also help them to partner with Grounded Solutions and support them in that way as well, so that that entity can be successful in developing that land trust.
The question about mapping, what we're hoping to do with the Housing Nashville report is have at least that information mapped and then add in those layers, just like you see on the planning. You can go to the planning department now. You can add on layers that will show some of this data. We do actually, planning department currently has a layer that shows all of the low-income housing tax credit properties in Nashville, Davidson County. And so we're trying to make sure that there's maybe a housing layer that allows for that information to be checked. But I do understand the point, but I just wanted to mention that there is some work going on with planning.
Next, Council Lady Allen. Yes, I'm running this. Gonna have to get the actual chair up here. There you
Thank
go.
you, there I am. Thank you, appreciate that. Just to follow up on sort of the, where are these apartments that are being lost? How can we hang on to that? Okay, my understanding is that there's something called project-based rental assistance, which might be Section 9 as opposed to Section 8, I can't remember. But it's the apartments themselves are getting HUD money that's specifically allocated just for that. And it's a great deal. They re-up every year and adjust to market rate, and it's a really great thing. And it's like a 20-year contract, and when that contract is up, which is what we're seeing happening, those entities have the owners have the option to re-up for another 20 years, but many of them are choosing not to, and then we lose that funding forever, and there's no replacement for it. So my question is,
The funding's tied to the project.
to the space, but if we could anticipate it, and this is the big if there were another apartment complex that were willing to transfer that to it, we could hang on to it. Is that a true statement? And how in the world could we make that happen?
So if planning in its layering of that data had the expiration date of the 20-year contract that was originally entered into with the respective agency, you could anticipate on the front end, approach the owners with a pilot grant like Metro is trying to do, at the 11th hour as people are being evicted. Right. If you get the information far enough in advance to plan your business, you can act on it. But if all you've got is a map, and I don't know what it shows, Adrian, I'd love to hear about it, but if the map doesn't show when those contracts expire, it's not data that's useful to your business.
Help me understand. So, and I think that's an important point. Even when we do understand that it expires, I think there may be two things we could offer. One is something lucrative enough that they would forego the option to turn it into luxury condos or whatever, and that sounds expensive. Or the other option is to find something else that's maybe now become Class C apartments, or,
you can do
transfer it somewhere else. Which of those two options, which is more realistic, and what do you think Metro would be the best use of Metro's money and efforts?
So we just had a conversation with several property owners that have units that are about to expire soon. And what they said was the same article I think that a lot of you probably saw over the weekend is the bidding wars is happening in homeownership. It's happening with the rental. What's happening is investors are coming in with cash, and it's very difficult to hear other offers in that. And so we are trying to work with them to understand what would be an alternative, so that they are not so willing to sell. And so one of those, we've talked about maybe partnering with a CDFI or something like that so that they can get a lower interest loan to also rehab the units. But you're right, we would have to get in maybe a year or two in advance before those units are expiring. And we have no problems with doing that. And that's why we're working with some of the tax credit owners now, just to hear from them exactly what is it we can do, because we want to make sure those retain
And do you get the feeling that there are things we could do? Is that a realistic approach?
There are some things, and some of them are refinancing with the Tennessee Housing Development Agency, and working to try to make sure they continue that affordability. So we're having conversations. It's just trying to figure out how much we're talking about, as far as to make sure that we can compete with the cash equity.
And then the option of transferring, letting that apartment go ahead and cash in, and transferring those PBRA credits or whatever you call them to another building. Is that an option, or the other buildings don't exist?
It's not an option, but I will say that MDHA just recently increased their program. They had a program where they were allowing for 200 project-based rental assistance units. They've increased that to 900. So if there are landlords out there that are interested in accepting or doing a project-based rental assistance HAP contract, they can do that now because they've just increased that unit count from 200 to 900.
So that might be some other way where we need to work on outreach to make sure that word gets out. That seems like that's a huge preserve to me that we need to work on.
You might keep this in mind. When housing markets fall, our business is cyclical. When housing markets fall, apartment owners who have vacancy will do anything to pay the mortgage. That's the time when owners enter into 20-year contracts to provide affordability. If we've got a database and we know when they're expiring, and we know we're about to be really overbuilt in multifamily in this town because we're already giving away 3 months of free rent just to get a warm body in, if we had the bullets ready to go and we had the data of what was out there and the tools like the 900 units of payments from MDHA, we could target it. And there's one real estate broker in town, works for CB Richard Ellis, who could tell you where every one of those apartments is today.
Okay, that seems like something we should do. 2 more questions, I'll be done. In terms of the community land trust or other ways that Metro is now currently providing either a lot or something and an affordable house is being built, my understanding is that it's difficult to ask for, to me, what ought to be at least a 30-year or 50-year or something perpetuity of the affordability. And I've been told that sometimes banks are reluctant to lend unless it's something more like 5 years or 15. Surely somewhere in this country somebody has found the banks that are willing to do that. Do we know where those banks are, and is there a way to bring them down here? I know the answer. I mean, I'm just thinking back to the days of Betty Nixon going to Chicago when the banks here were redlining my district, and she found it and saved a part of Nashville. So
THDA would love to have those loans.
THDA would love to have those loans.
We want to mention, too, that within the state of Tennessee, at a state level, we are prevented from having those 50, 99-year affordability periods. We're capped at 30 years within our state, so that is something to keep in mind. So when we're having those conversations around policies and changing those types of things, we hope that, you all are our partners in this, that you will keep that in mind, too, when we are talking to state folks.
So that's a state change that won't be easy to get, but we can keep that in mind. Okay, and then final question. No, actually, I think that was notes that I was writing down. I think those are my 2. So we can go with 30 years and then try to re-up it at the end of 30 years, but that's and THDA is the lender who is good with that.
Well, THDA will accept those loans because that's their mission.
So
they're willing to accept those loans and service those loans.
And they've also moved their servicing internally. They typically had an outside party who was doing that process before. So now that it's internally, they have more flexibility with what they can and can't accept. So it's really great for us because we could deepen our partnerships and those recommendations to them as well.
Gotcha. So this just shows I'm not a financier. Accept a loan, is that the same as make a loan? What does accept a loan mean?
They'll make the loan.
Make the loan, okay.
As long as it meets their criteria.
Great.
In this environment, also, one of the differences is that banks have exited, in part, a significant part, the residential mortgage industry. And they have been replaced by mortgage lenders, Churchill Mortgage, there's any number of them out there. And they've exited, but in recent years, since the recession and since Dodd-Frank, because it's not as profitable for them as it once was. However, there is something called the Community Reinvestment Act, CRA. You may have heard of that. And that requires banks to demonstrate that they are investing in the communities where they're doing business, they're giving back. And one of the ways that they still do that, especially if their CRA rating is shaky, and we're working with 2 banks right now whose CRA rating has been pretty shaky. So they're back in the market, and they'll make these loans. So we don't have as many banks involved as we once had, and who knows, maybe this will change. We have more mortgage companies today doing residential loans than we have banks, but we still have a core group of banks that are doing it.
Fifth Third Bank is one of the two that Kay's talking about, and I don't know who the other one is, but they just signed a contract to make sure that they're first at the table to make these loans.
All right. Councilman Roten.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Floyd is very familiar with my area, so I can talk to Floyd, and Floyd's very familiar with rehabbing. And I think the question I have is, where I live out in the Hermitage area, we have a lot of affordable housing, but it's affordable housing in apartments that were built in the 60s. And we have our apartments that are become Section 8. You have out-of-state owners, and they've gotten to the point where they're affordable because they're not taking care of them. Right. So you're having a lot of codes calls and things like that. What I need is someone to come in if I want to keep affordable housing there, because you're getting down to two options. They've let the building go so far. Either they're just going to tear it down because the land's more valuable than trying to rehab it, or you need it to be rehabbed before it gets to that point. And I think that's kind of where I am in my district is I need people, and maybe y'all know the people that would come in, rehab. You have kind of a mixed income type housing, affordable and mixed, so you could actually keep the building there and have affordable housing. And I think that's my problem is I've got buildings that are becoming deteriorated, no one coming in, just people from out of state, they're getting their checks every month. They don't really care what the building looks like. And so that's kind of what my problem is. And if y'all have any solutions for that, I'd be glad to listen to them.
Anything that's Section 8 or government subsidized, particularly federal government subsidized, pick up the phone and report them. The owners will lose their subsidies right away. It hurts the owner badly. Someone else will pick it up as a Section 8. You can't get rid of the contract. They're going to enforce the contract on whoever owns it. So anything that's federally subsidized, I encourage you to pick up the phone, call the local HUD office. For the neighborhoods like the Bonnas that might have 6-unit apartment complex or something like that, I think if you communicated to Adrian and Kay and Woodbine Community Development Organization, Urban Housing Solutions, there's 5 or 6 here in town that would love the opportunity, that have the resources, or for example, when there's another funding round at Barnes, which we have to wait for each year instead of money sitting there through a bond issue that you can go and apply for. They'd love to know about them so they could go to the Barnes Fund and apply for money to do what you're talking about. So I would encourage you to contact those organizations and Adrian and Morgan and let them know you got the following properties in your district. Let them take it from there.
Anything else? All right. Councilman Davis, is your light on from before? Or do you want to speak again? Go ahead.
It's just an update. The area where where it was a 4-3 vote, 3 against the one we're talking about, where they said the step down earlier was 4, was that a step down of 4 will be good, not a step down of 9 from 29. That area's policy was amended, and it was their interpretation, the staff's interpretation that 4 or 5 was a good enough step down from 29. 9 was not justified step down, and which the neighbors all felt, everybody felt that 9. So even with the policy amendments that I've done, we're still getting the pushback and the majority, and I've only had, this is probably my 8th disapproved bill out of over 100 rezoning bills. I've only had 8 disapproved by the commission, and half of those have been bills that really address this affordable housing issue, and that's why I'm keeping harping on the whole, the whole policy thing.
So Kay talked about middle housing. And 3 years ago, Avi and I went to the planning department in the final stages of Nashville Next and said, you don't have enough width off the arterials for middle housing. You only got 2 blocks on either side of the arterials. Give us 8 blocks off the arterials. We got slammed by staff, never got to the commission. So with your help, we could go back to the Planning Commission and say, give us 8 blocks off the arterials for middle housing. And the concept's pretty simple. You put the 4 to 6 stories on the arterials. You step down to cluster homes and duplexes where there's a piece of grass for the kids to play on before you get into the single-family neighborhoods. It's used all over the country, but we couldn't get any traction with the Nashville Next process. Would love your support, everybody in the room, for that concept. It can spread across the city if you just do it. 8 blocks. It's a walk to the bus line, 8 blocks. Okay, I grew up in Chicago. I lived in a 4-flat. We walked to the bus line. It's done everywhere in the country. We could do it here.
Anything else, Councilman Davis? All right, Councilman Bedney.
Thank you, Councilman, for replacing me. I thought that I was getting phone calls and I thought it was an emergency, so I stepped out. But appreciated you replacing me in a short notice. And I just wanted to thank you all for, I mean, there's more people here that are committee members, so that shows that you all are very concerned about affordable housing. And please consider some of the recommendations that we heard today, and let's take the lead on seeing if we need to create some legislation. As a follow-up, I wanted to let you know that I contacted the Nashville Chamber of Commerce and the Apartment Association for them to come and also speak to us. Anybody else that you think that we should have here to give us some ideas, feel free to invite them and let me know. We have many opportunities this year for people to come and share with us. As we just saw, thanks to the great legislator Casada, all the work we did in the last couple of years was erased, and so we need to find other ways because failure is not an option. People want us to create affordability in the city, so we have to find a way to do it. So thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, for replacing me up there.
All right, well, you're the last speaker in the queue, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn with first saying thank you again to our speakers.
Thanks for that.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.